Good morning, Predicted Trades family. Hope everybody's doing well today. Hope everybody had a good trading day yesterday. Real quick, we'll take a look at economic calendar. We already looked at it yesterday, but we'll look at it every day. Not much going on. Today, just some building permits, housing starts, yada yada. Thursday, we have jobless claims and some manufacturing index. Friday, we have global PMI. So, not a crazy eventful week this week. Anyhow, we do still have some earnings. Big one today after the bell is Netflix. Sorry, I'm trying to pull it. Come on. Come on, computer. There we go. So, today after the bell, we have Netflix kicking it off for FANG. Going to be a big earnings and reaction. This will likely set the tone for big tech earnings. The rest of them all report next week. So this is a preview of how they're going to react. This could cause today to be somewhat sideways, maybe a little choppy, while the market waits for a big earnings report. And then tomorrow after the bell, we have Tesla, the next big tech to report. We've got a little bit more this week, and then next week's a big one. Next week, we have Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Roku, Microsoft is in here. Yeah, Microsoft is on Tuesday with Google. So, plenty going on next week. The week after that is AMD. Then it starts to calm down a little bit, and then we get some more at the end of the month. So, wanted to dig into how yesterday unfolded, just to kind of help folks understand what happened, maybe understand if you missed the first signs that we were going to go down, how to still get into the move down. So, go ahead and forget about pre-market and let's look at the cash session. So we started the day up above our main beast center zone with our top burger, bottom burger. We open near that top burger and keep falling to it and bouncing. We were in a 3-minute squeeze that held us and kept us contained until we started to push out the top. Then that 3-minute squeeze disappeared. What that means is that squeeze is firing, and when it fires, you need continuation. We clearly did not get that continuation and slipped right back to VWAP. Then we started slipping under VWAP. That 3-minute squeeze came back in place, and then we dove down. And then you get continuation as that 3-minute squeeze fired us into the 30-minute squeeze bottom. I'll be honest, I did not catch this VWAP rejection with my first put. But when we got down to this 3-minute squeeze and started going sideways, I let this first drop happen, and then I caught on the retest a put. So you can see we slipped down from the 3-minute squeeze, settling at the 30-minute squeeze. We pop up one last time to test that burger top. That's where I picked up my first put. Took it down, 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 until we started consolidating here. Then I started locking up most of my puts. Did not pick up a call because I want to see things get moving, come back and retest, and then take off more. So I locked up all my puts here. Watched for this retest, and when it failed, I started picking up a few more puts. And even if you missed that test, they gave you one more. This is where I added to some of my puts. Right here is the daily 21. It happened to overlap that 38.55 key level. So we hit that 38.55, started to bounce, failed, picked up a little bit of puts, hit that 38.55 again, tried to bounce, setting a lower high in this, little region. added a little more to puts with the simple goal of losing the daily 21, going to the daily 15, locked those up, let it try to bounce back to the daily 21, and once it started failing our purple line, I loaded into my last puts of the day and rode those down until we hit our midline in our outer shaded region. Just as a refresher to everybody, the whole point of our beast system is when the day starts, you have your opening range. And once we start to break away from the opening range, you have your outer shaded region as the destination. So even if you don't get in and out like I do, and you picked up puts up here, the goal is to try to get down to here. Now, we don't always make it, right? There are plenty of times that we bounce at, say, this purple line. We could easily have gotten up to this purple line and taken back off, right? But in this game of probabilities and numbers, it's always worth taking a risk at a good point. That's why I try to wait for retests to get in. Confirmation that this move will continue. And I could have managed this a little better. I could have left some of the puts that I picked up way up here on as runners, but once I held down to the daily 21. For me, that was the first main goal. So locking everything up there is totally fine and great risk management because you can always re-enter. And in this instance, I just shifted to the next strike. So I played QQQ, and we'll take a quick look over at QQQ. On QQQ, I think the first one I picked up was actually this rejection of open. So, did not grab any up here at burger top like I normally would. Because, I was at least somewhat expecting a slip to VWAP and then a bounce back up. But I can say, like yesterday on Qs, I didn't take any trades until this test of squeeze top and burger top. Then I picked up some puts and played it back down to burger bottom. I locked all those up. I played a little bit of calls, but they just weren't really moving. And I locked all those up here. Should have switched to a put, but did not. I kind of wanted to just take a step back and see what was going on for the day. So anyway, Qs slipped down to VWAP, down to open, and dumped open. They tagged that 30-minute squeeze bottom. And when they bounced up to open, that's when I started getting puts on QQQ. I played the 295s earlier in the day, and right around here, Oh yeah, actually I was trying to get into some 296s up here, but I didn't get filled and it started to take off. So I just shifted to 295s, let it come down, and then pop back up to open, which was almost 295. So when it rejected right near 295, I picked up some of those, rode those down, locked them all up. But in a little hindsight, I could have managed it better to have locked up the majority of those, but left some to continue. Because I think, I think I traded these something like 90 cents or a buck to like $2, something like that. I'm trying to remember exactly. But anyway, when I locked them up, it was well over a double, almost a triple. Had I left a few of them, they ended up at like $5-6. So it would have been like a 5x. So just in a little review and hindsight, could have done a little bit better on my part to leave some of my original puts that I got way up at the top. But when I started loading into more puts later in the day, I just shifted down to like the 292s, 291s. I may have touched the 290s, I'm not sure. But at every point, there was opportunity for retest entry, right? Basically, every little pop got sold. We'll jump over real quick. To SPX, so I can talk a little bit about, not even having our B system loaded up, what it can look like with the levels and zones that we cover. So this zone on SPX, come on, oh, it's a 1. Change that to a 3-minute. So on SPX, we talked about this in prep yesterday. We had a gap fill zone that we were going to open in. And I talked about in prep, we can open in that gap fill zone and take off. We need to get out of it and continue to see upside. SPX could only get to the top of that zone before sellers started stepping in repeatedly. We printed a little bit above 3,900, but you can see these wicks. It got pushed down, falls back, hits some moving averages to try and gain some support, some buyers, right? Starts to push off those moving averages, but then quickly starts to fall right back and start rejecting them. Just to give you guys an idea, the blue is the 8, the 21 is the white, the 45 is the green. Kind of the same colors that I use on our daily moving averages. And as you can see, once we started to slip below those moving averages, we started rejecting them. We lost our trend line from the lows that was trying to carry us up. And it was right about here that I was screaming in the room, hey, we're losing that trend line on SPX. We can go down to finish filling this zone. We could bounce at the bottom and head back up. But if we dump out of this zone, we could likely head back down to daily moving averages. And that's what we got. I'll switch back over to a 1 minute real quick, just to show you guys how you can gauge an entry on a move that's already going if you're not in it. So on this 1 minute, as we get below all of our moving averages, every time we get near the 21.45, that's a chance for re-entry. Every test of moving averages is a chance to get in for continuation, right? It has to come and test those moving averages and move off of them. Same works if it's going up and it's bullish. You will have pullbacks to test moving averages before the next leg up. So yesterday, when there were pops to moving averages, I was picking up puts and getting in the next leg down. locking them up. The next moving average test, more puts, lock it up, more puts, lock it up. Just rinse and repeat, right? And I won't review those crazy SPX trades that worked so well off of our beast system. Some of them went 1,000%. So, just wanted to cover this real quick to give everybody an idea of how to not miss a great move, a reversion to the mean, which is what we got. Oop, one too far, there we go. And if we take off our beast tool, just so that we can look at squeezes and key levels, right? You can see we got in that 30-minute squeeze. Once we started rejecting VWAP midday, around 1 p.m., right? 12:30 to 1 p.m. is a very important time of day. It's when we can see our midday reversals. And you just have to stick with the pattern of what's going on in front of you. We played puts here. Some folks played calls here. You should have a trend line from your lows, especially if you have the trend tool that I shared in Professor's Indicators channel in our Discord. That trend tool would have given you a nice little trend line right about here. So your first indication is losing that trend line. And even if you don't take that trade, your next is when we fall to VWAP and start losing it and then rejecting it. That just is a great sign that sentiment has changed, especially when VWAP is sideways like this. Like even here, we got a VWAP rejection for another chance at puts. We got our bounce. We got through VWAP, retested it, and bounce. So just using VWAP, squeeze our key levels, you could easily build the thesis yesterday. Rejected VWAP, started to fall to squeeze bottom, couldn't get back to VWAP, went through squeeze bottom to the daily 50, just kept going, tried to catch some feet, kept on going down. Anyway, enough about yesterday. Let's dig into today. And let's step up to our 30-minute time frame. Real quick before I move on to what we can see today, another thing I always keep over here on the side is a larger time frame on ES, so I can just look at overall structure throughout the day. Yesterday at one point, when we started to sell off, I started showing these moving averages below. This is a 4-hour with the same 8, 21, 45. As we started to drop, I said first target is that daily 8. If we lose that daily 8, we could vacuum down to the 21.45. I posted that, I think around like 1 p.m., 1:30 maybe, when we started to get really going to the downside. We arrived at this daily 8. I said, look out. If we can't hold that daily 8, which was kind of around that 38.70, 38.75, I said, if we can't hold that zone, we could go straight on down to 38.40, 38.45. That's where we went to, through, and ended up closing at. Now we're scooping up off of those moving averages. So, in a way, all of our moving averages on a 4-hour were bearish and going down. Last week, we pushed back through them, flipping them all bullish. When moving averages cross over each other and start a bullish or bearish orientation, a lot of times when they do that cross, we can get a retest. All that is really is just they drove it up, profit taking back, reload for the next leg. So we'll have to see if today we get that rebound, continuation off of this gap up, and off of these moving averages. We could have a pullback to test the moving averages early, but as long as we can hold them, we can head higher to engulf what we did yesterday. Should we start losing those moving averages, that's when we'll start talking about lower, right? If we lose those moving averages, basically that 38.25 yesterday's low. I mean, I know we slipped a little bit lower, but 38.25 has been pretty key. So if we start to lose those moving averages in 38.25, then we can head down to 3800, 37.73, 37.41, which was last week's kind of low. We also have a trend line from a higher time frame that we got through on, was it Friday? Well, we came back and retested that trend line, held it, now we're bouncing. So let's see today if we get further continuation to the upside after that profit taking reset back to the daily moving averages. We do have those big earnings today and tomorrow, so we could see, now that we have returned to our daily moving averages, the 21, 15, and 8, we could see that we sit here today while they load for the next leg, whether it should be up or down. We might sit on these daily moving averages today. We're trying to push off of them pre-market. Let's see if we come back to retest them. The 8 crossed over the 15. So now it's above the 15. Still overlapping that 38.43. The daily 21 still overlapping that 38.55. Those are key levels, making a key zone where we should see interaction. So going into today, we've already fired a 30-minute squeeze to the upside. We'll see as we go sideways up here if another 30-minute squeeze starts to form as we get closer to open. And let's see if we come down to test 38.55. If we could hold that, we could get taking off back to engulf. We might still need to come down and retest 38.43, the daily 8, 38.40, the daily 15, and ultimately 38.25 is something that I'll mark to say we could come back to retest those things, but ultimately stay above them and hang out at these moving averages. Another potential scenario is we could slip to these moving averages, find our feet, and take back off to 3900 and back up to this range. So there's a couple of scenarios for today. One thing worth marking is that, or noting that daily 50 slowly stepping down every day about 5 points. So let's see, in about 4 days it will be sitting at 3900. Still a magnet to the upside, still a target that we may want to test before the next leg lower or higher. NQ. NQ, the big tell was that 12,100. We held it all morning, but then the second it gave out, you can see, boom, straight down through the daily 15. Couldn't even make it back for a retest, kept on going to the daily 8, 21, and 15. That's why we track these moving averages. They can be magnets. when we start to break down consolidation, your first thought should be the magnets below. Locking some up here, locking some up here. So, trying to push off those moving averages, obviously getting stalled at the 50, not a huge surprise. Let's see if we continue to reject the 50, we will come back likely to retest the 8 and the 21, kind of sitting at pre-market lows. As long as that can hold, we can head back up. Should that give out, we're going to retest yesterday's low and this daily 15. Should we start to lose these moving averages, we're going back to key levels. But let's see if we can stay at these moving averages today, let Netflix report, then we'll probably see a move away from these moving averages. On the ready, we could not get through the daily 50. So every index and every chart is going to have its own relationship with these key levels and these key indicators. So on ES we couldn't get through 3900. On ready we could not get through the daily 50. And after so many attempts, you should expect a reversal. It just means that buyers can't get through, sellers will take control. So same thing on the ready. Let's see if it can hold moving averages. Make the trip back up to the daily 50 to engulf that sell-off. Or if we're just going to settle into these moving averages going sideways, should we start to lose the daily 15 and yesterday's low, we could head right on back down. 1700, first Keltner below. Oh, skipped right over YM there. YM basically led the charge down yesterday. It popped up, tagged that daily 50, and just died. Under VWAP, stayed under VWAP, and under that 31,500. Couldn't get back to it. So down, 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 back to moving averages. Settling there, trying to get going. As we're starting a downtrend before open. Likely going to test these moving averages before heading back up through pre-market high to try to get back to that daily 50 and 31,500. If we can't hold these moving averages that are in a nice tight little range here of about 100 points, 31.27, 31.128. So nice little 100-point range here that we could just settle back to and sit today. But let's see if we can hold the 21 long enough. We won't need to retest these and we can start heading back up. Apple. Apple was a big part of that downside yesterday. They had a little news blip that came out right at about 1 p.m. talking about how Apple is slowing down their hiring process. Basically just an indication that one of the biggest companies, the tech leader, is slowing down hiring. It's not a good sign for the economy, right? And then I think there was another blip that Apple has some antitrust suit that's getting filed, right? But a lot of times on Wall Street, news will show up exactly when it was meant to enact or elicit a reaction that it was expected to. So not surprising that as Apple started to break down, boom, 2 big news blips come out that just make it tank. In fact, we can go look and see Can you tell where the news came out? It was basically right at low of day, hilariously. We started a little drift with the market, hit low of day, and started to bounce, and then news dropped, and it was like straight down to key levels. So Apple's going to be key for getting back to the upside. Made it back to the daily 8, catching a bounce. Let's see if it's going to retest it today. That daily 8 will be likely just inside the bottom of this 30-minute squeeze. So let's see if we're going to retest the daily 8, catch a bounce, and get going back up through 47.5 to 149. If we lose that daily 8, we could slip easily and quickly down to that 144 and all of our other moving averages right below 144. AMD. Chips were nice and strong yesterday, trying to push the market up, but ultimately gave out and came back, doing a good job of holding that daily 21 and pushing off of it pre-market. Let's see if it can hold the daily 21 and try to get going back up to the upside. If we lose that daily 21 and yesterday's low, we'll call it around 81, we can slip it right on back to the daily 8 and 15 and that Keltner below. Some nice targets. Amazon also decently strong, but hit a daily Keltner there at the highs and right back down. Didn't make it to moving averages. So let's see if market is going to be weak and send things down further. You know where Amazon's going, right to all of these moving averages that are stacked in about a 50-cent range. If we can hold this wick at about 13.5, we can consolidate for a move higher to try to get back to 115, 16, 17 kind of thing. BA made it to that second Keltner. Third Keltner still above at that 160, but rejected that second Keltner, fell all the way back to the first Keltner. Let's see if it can hold this first Keltner, try to get back to the second. If it loses first Keltner, going back to daily moving averages. Oh, I need to get back to my 30-minute. Well, cat's starting to make the journey back to moving averages. Got pulled down with the market yesterday. Let's see if we can try to get back to the 8 and 15. Or if it's going to slip back down to the second Keltner. And this 4-hour squeeze bottom. Google, not a real interest post-split. Gonna let the dust settle. But it could be setting in a W here, right? So that's something to keep an eye on. Maybe they do start rotating into Google now that it's at discount prices. Maybe this will become a little more, maybe we'll get a little more volume on Google. It's always been a low volume name, so maybe that will start to change things. GS reported, went well. They faded it right on back. Let's see if they're getting ready to just take it right on up further. Or if it's going to lose this daily 50, fall back to all of these moving averages to settle before heading higher. But at least there is some sentiment higher in this. But after a huge gap up on earnings, you're going to see some profit taking back to key levels. Let's see if it can hold 300 and start making the journey back up to this daily squeeze top. Or if this is going to be a change of trend off of the squeeze top. to send us back to the bottom. JPM, same stuff. Let's see if it can hold moving averages. If it loses them, going back to squeeze bottom. If it can hold them, it's going to try to make a journey to squeeze top. Meta. You know, surprisingly strong on Friday and pretty strong yesterday. Even in that sell-off, it just came back to its open level. So, a little bit of some upward sentiment in Meta. They have earnings next week. So let's see if they want to start to rotate into these kinds of names. I say these kinds of names because, you know, it was the Apples, Teslas, you might even say Amazons that carried us back up to the mean. And then you might have seen on Friday, a lot of those names that led us to the mean went sideways, and a lot of these other names that were lagging, they were playing catch up. So let's see if they continue to rotate into these other names while they let the big names kind of sit, since they've already made their journey above moving averages. Now they're kind of rotating into some of those other names to bring them up. Microsoft. Microsoft was a good tell yesterday as well. Remember that happened, the midday turn happened around 12:31 p.m. Microsoft before that rejected the daily 50, squeezed top, 4-hour squeeze top, slipped to the daily 8 and couldn't get back over the daily 21 from noon to 1 p.m. It sat there trying to get through the daily 21 in VWAP and couldn't for an hour. Great sign that we're probably heading down again. Let's keep an eye on this wick on Microsoft. Might want to drift down to retest it before heading higher. But it could magnet quickly back up to these moving averages and that 4-hour squeeze top. If we start to lose this wick and this 2-hour squeeze bottom, we could drift back down to 250 and that 4-hour squeeze bottom. Netflix. Big old day on Friday after the news that dropped, I believe, Thursday about a partnership, or it might have dropped Wednesday, a partnership with Microsoft. But either way, big old move up Friday, pretty strong yesterday, ran into squeeze top daily, slipped back down, so right at that daily squeeze top again. Netflix reports after the bell, not going to touch it today, but definitely going to be keeping an eye on it. We could get good reaction where it just takes off through this daily squeeze and gets up near 200. We could have a bad reaction where it just dumps back to daily moving averages. Or even squeeze bottom. We'll have to see. NVIDIA also decently strong yesterday. Got back to the daily 50 before the sell-off hit. So let's see if it can try to work its way back up to that daily Keltner, daily 50, daily squeeze top. All these magnets above. Or if it's going to just slip down to back to these daily moving averages below. QQQ. So, QQQ. Could not get to that daily Keltner, rejected squeeze top, fell through, back to moving averages. We have a nice trend line going from overnight. Let's see if that trend line can continue to provide support and send us higher, back through the daily 50, back to that Keltner above. Should that trend line give out, we're slipping back to these daily moving averages that we just wicked yesterday. So if we miss it, or if we give out that trend line, we could slip back to these daily moving averages and just sit. If we start to lose those, probably back to 285, and then ultimately this zone below that was our support to go higher. Roku, also decently strong yesterday, got over its moving averages, but put in a double top, put in an M, right? It ultimately did not give out the bottom of that M and held these moving averages and trying to open near that daily 50. So if we're going to have recovery today, Roku could be a good play off of this daily 50 through yesterday's high in a bid to get to this first Keltner up. But if we lose a daily 50, likely heading back to yesterday's lows, these moving averages, should those give out, squeeze bottoms and first Keltner down. SPX we pretty much covered. It did peak out of this zone and dove through this zone. So technically this gap has been filled. Normally when gaps are filled, I go ahead and remove the drawing. But I'm just going to leave it for now, because if we can get going back to the upside, this is where we'll start to run into some resistance. And ultimately, if we could, let's say, recover and close in this zone, it might set up a nice spot for us to take off higher if Netflix has good earnings. I'm sorry, on SPX, if we start to lose these moving averages in yesterday's lows, we could head right back to this first Keltner down, which aligns really well with June's POC on ES, which is 37.73. So yesterday we fell 2 POC on ES, that 38.57. If we lose that today and the selling pressure continues, we could go down to June's POC, 37.73 from POC to POC. Tesla. Whoop, I think I skipped right over SPY. Sorry about that. SPY, came back to moving averages. Let's see if they can hold to start to recover back to yesterday's highs. We could easily just come back to the moving averages and settle and bounce around going sideways until Netflix reports after the bell. Tesla was strong early, got over that 744, but as we know, we've been tracking that 744, and Tesla has only gotten over it a little bit and then right back down. So we got over it a little bit yesterday and then right back down to our next key level. Look at that, from 718 up, 744, right back to 718. Let's see if Tesla can hold 718 to try to get back to 744. We've got all of our daily moving averages right under 718. Not surprising, it's a huge key level that we have interacted with so much the last few months. So, not surprising to see all those moving averages sitting right underneath it. We could just settle back to 718. Tesla reports tomorrow after the bell. Finally, VIX. It looks so clear on a higher time frame. One thing I like to try to remind folks is if you are unsure what trade to take at any given point in the day, you need to start looking at higher time frame charts to understand when a potential trend change could be forming. On VIX, early we dumped to that 24.5 and caught a bounce. And we slowly drifted to that 24.5 Lost it for a second, but then once we're above and taking off, we need to be thinking we could see some downside here, right? For continued upside, we needed to give out 24.5 and get down to this daily 200 that we've been trying to get to and test. So when we held 24.5, broke back over it, even gave a little pullback to this daily Keltner and that level, held that daily Keltner, huge key signs that a drop's coming. VIX worked its way back above 25. Now with our gap up, we're back below 25. So if we're going to get recovery today, we should try to stay under 25, get through 24.5, get down to 24, and the squeeze bottom. And a big key level here at this 23.33. I've been dying to see us test this, and it's been a couple of months since we have. So, for upside today, we need to stay under 25, head down to 24, 23. If we're going to settle back to moving averages, we're probably going to get above 25 and chop around 25. If we're going to lose those moving averages and head down on the market, we're probably going to get above 25, back to the squeeze top, back through the daily 8, above 26, which is kind of where we stalled out yesterday, in a bid to get back to the daily 21 and 27. So hopefully this was helpful for everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see all of you guys in chat. Good luck today. Keep in mind that we have that Netflix earnings. We could just have a sideways day while they wait for that reaction. But good luck today, and we'll see you in chat.